Over the past several months, the manufacturing industry has been part of the country's critical infrastructure by supporting healthcare workers, working on treatments, and producing much-needed personal protection equipment. That topic is not going to go away. Jay Timmons, President and CEO of the National Association of Manufacturers, is a leading advocate for the nearly 13 million men and women who make things in America. Jay, it's great to see you. Love your backdrop. You win. It's awesome to see you. Look, I mean, we've talked a lot about this manufacturing, about infrastructure in America, and about how investment in this area is one of the few things that kind of creates recurring returns after you make the deep investment for businesses, for families, for communities, et cetera. And so I'd love to hear, I mean, you've been at this for a long time, well before COVID, but I'd love to hear what you think our national priorities need to be.
Well, look, we need to ensure that once we come out of this, and we will come out of it, it's obviously been a lot longer than any of us would have wanted or expected. But when we come out of this, we got to make sure that we are still competitive as a nation. And for manufacturers, we worked really hard to get several policies enacted that would make us more competitive. So, for instance, comprehensive tax reform was a boost to manufacturing in the United States. It was a boost to the economy overall. Regulatory certainty was critical, something we'd been working for years. So we're very happy that we got those two very important priorities done. Now, there are a lot of other issues that we need to work on moving forward. Infrastructure, the focus here today, is clearly very, very important for not only manufacturing competitiveness, but for the competitiveness of our nation as a whole. Trade agreements is vital. You know, improving our relations with other countries around the world and being able to access those 95% of customers that live outside of our borders. Workforce development. We've had a horrible economic situation over the course of the last few months with such massive unemployment. But even with all of that, Steve, after we've lost 1.3 million jobs in manufacturing and only gained back half of those, we still, ironically, have 460,000 jobs that we can't fill in manufacturing. So workforce development and skills certification are so critical as well.
Jay, we're not on cable TV, so I think I can say this. I mean, you're a no BS kind of guy. We've known each other for a long time. And I think that one of the areas of concern I've had for a long time is what you just talked about, training, upskilling, what we do with our workforce, you know, to bring them in alignment. I know that there, at least right now, according to your data, almost 400,000 open jobs. There's a skills gap, et cetera, out there. The CEO of PricewaterhouseCoopers America, Tim Ryan, made a very big impression on me. He said, look, we're a huge company. We can go out whenever we need a new set of skill sets and just buy another company to do that. Or we can make the harder, but maybe the longer term investment in upskilling our own team from internal work, internal investment, and kind of do that. And I was impressed with that because I said, wow, maybe that's what we need to make. Maybe we've never upskilled Americans because it was too easy to acquire others for that. I'd just love to get your sense of what's real and what's fig leaf when it comes to talking about upskilling our workers, our citizens in America.
So I'm not sure that I could identify quite as succinctly as you have or Tim has about what the problem may have been, but the problem exists. And there is no question that all of us in every industry, every part of the economy can do better at upskilling and reskilling our own workforce, manufacturers included. And I'm really proud of so many manufacturers across this country who, over the course of the last several years, have really taken it upon themselves to do exactly that. But honestly, Steve, it's not enough. We have, right now in manufacturing, I mean, just think about this statistic. If nothing else changes, even with all of the economic calamity that we've experienced over the course of this year, we are still, by the year 2028, it's not that far away, we still are going to have to fill 4.6 million jobs in manufacturing. And all of our numbers, according to studies done by Deloitte and by our Manufacturing Institute, show that about 2.4 million of those simply won't be able to be filled because we can't find people with the right skills. That's why we've invested so heavily at the NAM in the work of the Manufacturing Institute. So they are on military bases, for instance, training, transitioning military personnel, those that are leaving the military service, on some basic manufacturing skill sets and certifications. That's why we have put a premium on reaching out to women. Only 27% of the manufacturing workforce is female, and obviously that's a huge gender gap for us. It's why we put a priority on comprehensive immigration reform, and why we don't support exclusionary policies that keep people out of our country, or even worse, keep 13 million people in the shadows, because those 13 million people who we can't hire probably have a lot of the skills that we could use to fill those empty jobs, make us more competitive, and increase the quality of life for all Americans.
I appreciate it. Jay, I wonder if you could give me a snapshot. You've got two big National Association of Manufacturing campaigns, maybe more, but the two that I know of is one's called an American Renewal Action Plan, and would love to just hear a slice of that. And then also in your call for about $1 trillion, which I argue is lowballing, and I'm probably a $2 trillion guy on infrastructure, but we'll settle for the trillion.
I'm with you, Steve, too, for sure.
Okay, you have a Building to Win program. So give us a snapshot of these two campaigns. Frame them as scaffolding for why they're important in this infrastructure discussion.
Yeah, and by the way, folks can get those at nam.org and they can see them. So the American Renewal Plan really has been focused around our response and our recovery to COVID and to what has happened to our economy. It really was focused over the course. We released several different tranches, if you will, of that plan over the course of the last several months. And the first few bills that passed Congress, the relief bills, we actually achieved about 6 of our priorities, and we were very pleased to see that. We were very pleased that manufacturers were literally at the table as many of these bills were being drafted. We're not so pleased that Congress is hung up right now on the latest round of COVID relief. So what we have achieved is we achieved, of course, the Main Street lending program to make sure that we had the appropriate liquidity for businesses, larger businesses that would pledge to hold on to their employees and not lay them off. We were very pleased to see the unemployment system that had some enhanced benefits early on to allow consumers to continue to spend. We were very pleased to see the PPP program that was put in place, especially that program for small and medium-sized manufacturers or small and medium-sized businesses that helped them to help ensure that they could access capital and not have to close their doors. Now, this latest round of relief negotiations has that one on hold, and it's really, frankly, quite frightening. We've got about 120,000 small businesses in this country, as you well know, that have already closed their doors permanently. We cannot afford, as a country, as a nation, the soul of our country cannot afford to see tens of thousands of more small businesses closing their doors permanently. The PPP program needs to be reauthorized. It's got enough money, but it statutorily couldn't lend anymore after a date in August, and funds have to be used by the end of December. We know this pandemic will not end by the end of the year. The last point I'd make in the renewal plan is one that has not been acted on, but I think either presidential candidate will be focused on it, and that is creating incentives. We hope they're incentives, not penalties, for businesses to invest more in the United States. That's what tax reform did for us in 2017. It really supercharged the economy, allowed us to hire about 250,000 manufacturing workers, invest more in America, raise wages and benefits. If we're going to focus on, some call it reshoring, I say investing the next dollar in America, that has to be driven by incentives. It has to be driven by incentives that actually entice companies to actually locate here and to manufacture here, especially when we're talking about supply chains. I had a big, let's just call it a discussion with somebody in the administration that was just incensed that we had to go to Kuala Lumpur. The NAM was really trying to help source and locate PPE during the biggest crisis point during the pandemic. We're going to get there again. But there was a big consternation about 60 million surgical gloves that I had to source out of Kuala Lumpur. Why don't we make those in the United States? I was asked. I said, well, because we don't grow rubber trees in the United States. And sometimes you actually have to manufacture where it makes the most sense economically, especially when you have raw input materials going into the product. And that's a prime example, which brings us, by the way, to infrastructure and our Building to Win proposal. We need to make sure that our ports and our inland waterways, our airports, and certainly our roads and bridges. I mean, gosh, we have 55,000 bridges in this country that are rated structurally deficient. We get a D plus rating from the American Society of Engineers. I mean, that's preposterous that in our country we should be experiencing that. And of course, infrastructure isn't just about asphalt. It's also about technology that is allowing us right now to have this conversation. So broadband, 5G, other technology that will actually propel us into the future. And I'm with you. Yeah. $1 trillion to me is a down payment. We're talking about a 10-year plan. No matter what we do, it's a 10-year plan. And you always get the back and forth. We've been advocating for this as manufacturers for several decades. Think about this, Steve. We've been arguing about $1 trillion for decades. And what have we just spent without batting an eye in the last 6 months? $3 trillion. $3 trillion. If we can do that in 6 months, I think we can do up to $2 trillion over 10 years if we simply put our nose to the grindstone and we stand behind those elected officials who are willing to take this on to help us improve our country for the future.
Jay, what you just shared from talking about, the budget and what we prioritized in the past and what we came in, what you've talked about, what it really is going to take to onshore, because I think there's a bit of naivete out there about that. These are all potential topics on their own, and I hope you'll come back and we can disaggregate, because it's very powerful what you said. So I want to thank you for that. Jay Timmons, President of the National Association of Manufacturers, thank you for your important thoughts today, your candid thoughts.
It's great to be here, and I never, ever refuse an invitation from the Hill or from Steve.
Thank you,
We'll see
Jay.
you again.
Thank you so much.